Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Mr. Minister, Mr. Derek Hanekom, Dr. Albert van Jaarsveld, the President of the Dst-Nrf, Professor Eugene Cloete, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor for Research and Innovation at Stellenbosch, Professor Lulama Makubela from the Mouton University of Technology, the Director of Research. This is a co-host institution to the center. And of course, ladies and gentlemen and students, you're most welcome here on this celebration of this new center. And I specifically appreciate the fact that people came from quite far. I'm very pleased to see some of my old mentors, Bob Murray, who flew down specifically for this. Very happy with this. People who came from Cape Town and so on. So we really appreciate the time that you've set aside for this. When I prepared this presentation, I decided to get in some expert opinion about what I should do. So I first asked my daughter. You might recall there was a previous American president who did the same thing. So I asked Marika, who is sitting here today, who's a graphic design in the making, and she said, whatever you do, Dad, make sure there's pictures and photographs and graphics in your presentation. Otherwise, people will just fall asleep. Then I asked my PA, Martie van Niekerk, who's been my PA for 14 years. She said, you know, you're a philosopher, Johann, whatever you do, just don't philosophize, don't theorize. Otherwise, people will also fall asleep. And then I decided, of course, the person who I trust the most is my wife of nearly 40 years. And she just said, you know, just be short because you can get on a bit. So, of course, you will see that I pretty much took none of these advice seriously. I'll talk for about 15 minutes about the center. This center in Scientometrics and STI policy is an interesting center because it brings together a wide range of fields and scientific disciplines, and of course has the one unique feature, and that is that the object of our study is the science system and the science, technology, and innovation system. And that makes the work of the center specifically important, and it makes it into a meta-science endeavor. Just to give you an idea, in the center, we try to bring together diverse fields like science policy studies, innovation studies, sociology of science, even a little bit of philosophy of science, history of science, bibliometrics, scientometrics, R&D evaluation, higher education studies. And all of these disciplines, in one way or the other, study the national system of innovation. Many of these meta-scientific disciplines, in fact, do have histories that go back far in time, which also is an interesting challenge. So we have the philosophers of science. We talk about the archaeology of meta-science going back to Aristotle, 320 BC, who wrote the first philosophy of science, and great philosophers like Bacon, Whewell, Karl Popper. The sociologists of science, from Max Weber, 1905, Karl Mannheim, who wrote a classic study on ideology and utopia, and of course Robert Mouton, who is seen as the father of the sociology of science. I must, at this point, apologize on behalf of the species that these are all men, but that is not of our doing, but of course it's something that we have to address. And then also, if you look at technology and innovation studies, people like Schumpeter, Everett Rogers, and so on. When I thought back about the histories of these different disciplines and how they made up what we now call the field of science and technology studies, I was struck by the fact that by the early 60s, 1960s, there was an interesting intersection of scholarship. And we had a blooming period within 3 or 4 years, which I think started the emergence, the growth of this new discipline of science and technology studies. And I'll just give you 5 quick examples. In 1962, Thomas Kuhn wrote his famous The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And this book of his spawned a whole new paradigm in sociology of science studies. It actually changed the whole way that we think about science and the way that science grows. In the same year, there was a famous debate between Michael Polanyi and J.D. Bernal. Michael Polanyi didn't like the socialist notions of Bernal and advocated for the Republic of Science. And it started a whole discussion about what should the relationship be between the state and science, and the roots of a science of science policy emerged. 1963 saw another famous publication by Derek de Solla Price, of course, Little Science, Big Science. And in this book, he argued for the need to have strong quantitative measures because science was growing. This is 50 years ago. He anticipated the advent of big science. And of course, we know what that means these days, especially in South Africa with things like Meerkat and SKA. And basically, he said that we now need new tools to measure this big science. 1963, Michael Kahn will know this was the famous first version of the Frascati manual, because the OECD constituted a committee with Christopher Freeman as the chair to draft the first version of Frascati manual at a place called Villa Falconeri. That's on the right-hand side there. And they brought out the first Frascati manual. I was telling Eugene Cloete I would like to have a house like that for the new center. He didn't even respond to my email. And then in 1964, of course, another famous event, Eugene Garfield founded the Institute for Scientific Information and released the Science Citation Index, which led to really the birth of the citation industry. And of course, journal impact factors, and of course, all the issues about university rankings and H-index and all of these matters. So since that time, over the last 50 years, I think that we've seen an interesting set of trends where science and technology studies have come of age, and we continue to see more articulated and even more unexpected convergences between these meta-scientific disciplines. There's a clear convergence between evaluation studies, especially research evaluation, and bibliometrics. There's a growing convergence in the last 10, 15 years in the methodologies to measure the uptake, utilization, and impact of scientific knowledge. There's a growing convergence between sociology of science, started by Mouton, and bibliometric studies. And in recent years, something that Nico Cloete and I talk all about all the time, the increasing convergence between science, innovation, and higher education policy studies. So the new center faces many challenges, but I thought I would highlight three. One is, in the nature of a center of excellence, I think our first challenge is to develop a robust and credible theoretical core of work to contribute to the international scholarship in STS. Secondly, we understand that we are in a particular center which should provide reliable data and intelligence about the state and performance of science in South Africa in order to assist and inform the work of the Department of Science and Technology, the National Research Foundation, and other key actors in the national system of innovation. And we also have a third imperative, to educate and train the next generation of scientometricians, sociologists of science, and science and innovation policy analysts for the country, but of course also for the continent. So in our proposal to the NRF DST, we did this first mapping. You will find that in the pamphlet that we have prepared for this launch, so I'm not going to elaborate on this. But in our first mapping, we've decided to organize the work of the center in these four big areas. We will have a special interest on science, technology, and innovation indicators. We intend to publish very soon the first biannual STI indicators, going back to the state of what they had been 20 years ago. We're going to focus on science, technology, and innovation policy, not just policy for its own sake, but for development. We have a special interest in issues around the regeneration of the scientific workforce. And of course, we also will focus on science communication, evaluation, and impact. And then I thought I had to throw in, because being the director of the center, I may even have an odd pet project. And my pet project, the other members of the management doesn't know that at this stage, but I have an interest in the history of South African science from the days of Onderstepoort, the Carnegie Corporation investigation, and of course such famous people as J.L.B. Smith, Margaret Latimer, Courtney Latimer, people who discovered the coelacanth. And this on the right-hand side, if you can't see, that is Basil Schonland. I was actually thinking that when I did this search, I came across these, I think I've run out of power. These are two stamps that commemorated science, and I wonder what was the last time that we commemorated science in stamps. Fortunately, by the way, do not worry about the presentation, because there were only two slides left. And the two slides that are left is to do two things. One is I want to introduce my team to you, the current core team. This Center of Excellence is a joint partnership with CREST, the Center for Research on Evaluation Science and Technology at Stellenbosch as the lead center. And can I, at this point, just ask the staff at CREST just to stand up for a moment so you can see who are the people here at CREST who's going to do this work. So these are the staff there, Marina, Michael, thank you. Yeah. The co-host institution of the center is Tshwane University of Technology, Erie Institute. Of course, the director of Erie, Rasigan Maharaj, is in Boston at the moment on a sabbatical, but I'm very pleased that the three other senior research members of the institute could join us. If they could stand up. Mario, Erika, and Lindile. Thank you. Our third partner is the Center for Higher Education and Transformation, which Nico Cloete established nearly 20 years ago. And if we can't ask the Chet people to stand up. Yes, yeah. And finally, we have an international partner, the Center for Science and Technology Studies at the University of Leiden. And of course, at the moment, one of its senior staff members, Robert Thijssen, is on sabbatical at Stellenbosch. So, Robert, you're the sole representative of Leiden, but you should stand up. Yeah. And finally, this is the current team, and I wanted to just finally use this opportunity to introduce to you the future team of the center. And these are my current master's and PhD students. We are fortunate that currently we have about 20 of our 40, we already have nearly 40 master's and PhD students from across Africa enrolled in our postgraduate programs. We're running a course this week, as it happens, on science utilization and science communication. So can I ask my current, half of my current master's and PhD student cohort to stand up? Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of my presentation, I really want to, first of all, also express my appreciation on the behalf of the team to the Minister, to the Department of Science and Technology, the NRF, who has had the foresight to call for a proposal in this area. Of course, we do believe that this is very important. We recognize that you have seen the same value in this, and of course, we accept that challenge gladly. I secondly want to express a great appreciation to my Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, Eugene Cloete, who has been a huge support over the last 2-3 years in the work of CREST, the people at our research office, Terina Tron, Marlene Fauchy, who helped us greatly in the preparation of the proposal. And then finally, my home team. I have to thank here today my staff, and especially Marty and Nigel, who has put this launch and this program together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. Hopefully my power won't run out, so I'll make it. So, from my side, Mr. Minister, nice to have you in Stellenbosch as always. I'd like to say welcome to everybody from University of Stellenbosch and Tshwane University of Technology and University of Leiden and other partners in this very, very exciting venture that we're launching here this morning. I'd just like to take this opportunity to remind people about why the Centers of Excellence are important and how they fit into the national landscape a little bit. The Centers of Excellence program run by the DST and the NRF is just one of the many strategic instruments that we inject into the science landscape to try and transform that landscape and to elevate performance in areas that we feel are of critical strategic importance to the country. We have the research chairs, as you know, the Centers of Excellence, the national facilities, including some of the projects like the SKA, that are all strategic investments that are trying to grow our science system in a focused manner, while not at the same time ignoring the sound foundations that are required to drive our science system forward. We focus these investments in areas that we feel that are of strategic importance to the country, either because we have a particular advantage or because we feel it's an area that we want to grow our expertise into the future. The objective of a Center of Excellence, of course, is to grow a critical mass of expertise, not just from one institution, from across institutions, and the whole science sector to focus their research activities so that they can draw in the numbers of students that we'd like to see in these centers of excellence. The centers of excellence have been exemplary instruments in terms of drawing in large numbers of students focusing on particular areas of work, and you can see the result of the prior work that's already been conducted in this area with the group of students that are sitting around the table. You are the future of these kinds of ventures, and I hope that you'll grab this opportunity with both hands. The objective, of course, is to not only provide career paths and career opportunities to young people, but at the same time also to make sure that we establish a real global competence in this area of work. And this is what we're trying to do by formulating a center of excellence. We have to make sure that the outputs that are generated, the students that are generated, and the work is recognized not only at a national level, but at an international level to be of a caliber that's going to put South African science at the forefront of this particular discipline. That's the challenge for Johann and his team and the people from Tshwane University of Technology, to work together to make sure that we actually achieve that particular objective. I think few people know that when we hand over a center of excellence like this to institutions, we also sign a performance agreement with them. And Johann, so we will be coming to have a conversation with you about how many high-level, high-impact science papers and nature papers and other journal papers you're going to produce over the next couple of years. And we're going to hold you to it, because I think it's one of those performance criteria that we insist on as far as centers of excellence are concerned. Of course, different disciplines have different kinds of media that they work in, and we'll take that into consideration. But it is important that we really drive this initiative aggressively. And of course, we're delighted by this co-hosting of this particular center, the fact that Tshwane University of Technology and Stellenbosch are collaborating in this regard. That's precisely what we're trying to do with these centers, to get groups of critical expertise functioning and working together across institutional boundaries. And this is a very good start. Some of them already function very effectively across 3 or 4 institutions, and we hope it'll grow over time as well as the center matures. Of course, I do want to just end off by saying something about the process of the identification of the centers of excellence. The centers of excellence proposals are subjected to an international and national peer review process. We use the best possible people we can get hold of to evaluate the proposals, to look at them, and to make recommendations to the NRF. I want to state here on the public platform that nobody at the NRF or nobody at the DST influences these decisions that are made, these recommendations that are made by the peer review panels. We take them as they come, we implement the recommendations that come out of there, and they flow into the different environments into the future. It's important that people understand that we follow a strict peer review process, and on that basis, I would like to congratulate the Tshwane University of Technology, University of Stellenbosch, in their very successful proposal that they obviously submitted to this process through a very rigorous peer review process. And we hope that the quality of the work that you demonstrated in the proposal will be carried forward in the future work of the center. Congratulations, and all the best of luck to all of you in this venture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Stellenbosch University. A special word of welcome to Mr Derek Hanekom. Always good to host you here in Stellenbosch, especially on such a beautiful day as today. But you know that he was also in a previous life Minister of Agriculture. And as we walked here, he told me that he has some special connection in terms of organizing the climate. So thanks very much for that. Dr Albert van Jaarsveld, welcome here. Our colleagues from Tshwane University of Technology, Professor Aluma Makubela, and also the representative from Leiden, all the directors, all the deans, all the vice-chancellors from other universities, you're more than welcome here at Stellenbosch University. Well, what I'd like to spend a few minutes on is first of all to say, well, what does it take to create a center of excellence? And why should we have centers of excellence? Now, part of the strategy at Stellenbosch University that we have followed is to identify areas where we have strength. Then to organize people around these areas, get them to talk to one another, because you often find that they're dispersed all over campus in different faculties and in different departments. But by creating foci, what you do is you create critical mass, you get people to talk to one another. But at the national level, it is absolutely important that we do exactly the same. So that we identify those areas where science will and can make an impact on society. And this is what the Centers of Excellence program has done over the past years. And they've just been through a review process with some recommendations out of that review process. But overall, these centers have impacted on the science that is done in this country, of course, together with the Saatchi Research Chair initiative. But what it also does, it helps us to focus on problems that are really big problems. And in terms of the National Development Plan, and as we go towards 2030, it will become key that we continue to group people at the national level in order to work together on these major challenges that we face in South Africa. So the national part of a center like this is incredibly important. To get national collaboration and international collaboration is important. I often think that as universities and as institutes, we often compete too much with one another. What we need to do is collaborate, because in that collaboration, you in fact lift the whole system in South Africa, the whole education system, but also the research enterprise in this country. And the research enterprise in South Africa, in fact, is quite healthy. The CSIR, for instance, went through an international review process last year, and it came out on par with the very best of similar institutes in the world. In terms of innovation, we are number 16 in the world at the moment when it comes to patents. But very often we don't communicate the success that we have in science. And that is a major challenge that we face in science. But we also need to measure science. And this is not that easy. And this is why this particular Center of Excellence is so important. Because it is a way of tracking and measuring science. Now, as a scientist, we are on the receiving end of all these matrices. For instance, there's not one scientist that does not know about the H-index, about the Hirsch index, which basically tells you that if you have published 10 papers that have been cited 10 times or more, then your H-index is 10. Or if it's 20, it means you've published 20 papers that have been cited 20 times or more. But there are limitations to all of these. For instance, if you are a top scientist, you might only publish 5 papers that have all been cited more than 1,000 times. So you will have a very low H-index there. It will only be 5. And I've often wondered what would happen if someone comes with the absolute cure for HIV/AIDS and publishes this in the Farmers Weekly. Just imagine the impact factor of the Farmers Weekly over a few years. So the point I really want to make is that it is not that easy to measure the impact of science in a short term. Fraunhofer Institute, which employs 21,000 researchers around the world, have built the whole enterprise basically on the MP3 player which they developed and on LED lights. A company like Apple, they really just have 3 average products, which is the iPhone, the iPad now, and the iPod. The point is here that you've got to have a system by which you constantly push the limits in incremental ways, small steps, so that you eventually get these breakthroughs which then make a difference on a global scale. But you've got to measure that. You've got to measure the quality. You've got to measure the impact. You've got to also help determine what policies should be in place, so people that actually do spend the money on research and innovation, that they have an idea of where they should invest. So to create a successful center, or for that matter, a successful university, you don't need much. You need basically 2 things. You need good people, and you need an enabling environment of which funding is crucial. So if you have that in place, a center will work or a university will work. We are very fortunate that through the work done in South Africa already in this field, and with Professor Johann Mouton, who will be director of the center, he is well known in South Africa for the work that he has done. The work that he has done has already influenced science in South Africa and science policy. And we are very fortunate to have him at Stellenbosch University to lead the center together with our colleagues from other universities, from specifically Tshwane University of Technology. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank everyone that was involved in the process of getting this Center of Excellence awarded. Our research office here processed no less than, I think, about 14 applications for the Centers of Excellence.
Yeah,
Initially, yeah. But the point is, the same amount of work goes into each one of those applications. That is a huge task. So, Torina, to you and your team, thank you very much, and also for putting this together with Tshwane University of Technology. It is really appreciated. We are very proud, of course, to be entrusted with hosting the Centre of Excellence. It is, by the way, the 4th Centre of Excellence that we are hosting at this university. I'm pleased to see the directors of the other Centres of Excellence here. And what Dr. van Jaarsveld said is absolutely true. And I think we should perhaps run our departments like this, where you enter into service level agreements. Before you get your next tranche of money, you actually have to deliver on certain service levels. And by the way, these are stretched targets. These are not that easy to live up to. All our other centres, by the way, have been successful in having a renewal for a second term, which means that we do get it right, but the expectations are extremely high for these Centres of Excellence. A sincere thank you to everyone that was involved in organising this morning. A sincere thanks to every one of you that came to this event this morning to share with us this very pleasant event. A special word of thanks to our Minister and the CEO of the NRF for taking time out of your busy schedules and to honour us here with your presence. I have no doubt that this CEO will live up to the expectations that we all have. And I want to wish Professor Johann Mouton and his colleagues all the best of luck. Thank you very much.
You know, we've been launching so many things. Meerkat, Centers of Excellence on Mathematics and Scientometrics. I thought I'd better stick to my text because I might just get it wrong. In the organization that I am part of, when we run out of power, we just say, Amandla. And the power comes back. Sure, thank heavens I haven't run out of power though. Well, good morning everybody, and it's great to be here. I must say, Program Director Dr. Thomas After Heider. Now, I guess over the years most of you have got to know Thomas quite well. And you know, he doesn't lack humor. He's got a good sense of humor, but he's quite a serious fellow, actually. But these last few events that he's been program directing, we just see a big smile on his face. You know, this is the smiling Thomas. So I got some of our top researchers to do some research and to inform me, what is it? You know, what's this magic? And so they told me, actually, none of them could really tell me. I went to his wife, and his wife said, well, actually, it's countdown time. And he's calculated that there are only 34 days left, and then there's a good possibility that they might finally get rid of their minister. So you'll see in the next 34 days, that smile will get bigger and bigger on Thomas's face. What Johann did is he got so many people acknowledged and so many people standing up. I then realized that we have an extraordinary number of very important people in this room. So I'm going to refrain from doing all of these acknowledgements because I'm bound to miss a few people out, you know, and that could cause offense. So I won't, you forgive me, Eugene, if even vice rectors don't get acknowledged, you know, because actually in this room we're all equally important. But of course, some people are more equally important than others. And that's, you know, obviously Albert van Jaarsveld, because he carries the money. He's a little bit more important than the rest of you. But allow me to start off with a quote from our 2002 National Research and Development Strategy. And this is how it goes. Individual research grants, whether open or in directed themes, have been shown globally to be limited in creating long-term research capacity, and most developed countries now have strong programs to establish centers of excellence. The NRF has actively investigated global best practice and is able to create the necessary infrastructure. After 3 years, that's what it said in 2002, the funding required for this program will be 150 million rand, starting with 50 million rand in the first year. So, although brief and low-key, this business-like passage reveals volumes. It asserts quite clearly that a preference was emerging in favor of the Center of Excellence model, and then points out that our ever-nimble NRF had by then already concluded that this was the option that made most sense for South Africa. The passage from the Research and Development Strategy also implies that a plan existed with at least a 3-year time horizon. In a nutshell, this is a treasure of solid policy development followed by efficient and systematic implementation. I doubt that the visionary authors of this strategy, though, would have anticipated 12 years ago the rapid growth of this program and the impact it was to have on our research environment. But where did it actually start? It started with critical self-reflection, aided by objective research and analysis. And what kind of research was this? It was, what I've since learned, is the relatively young discipline called Scientometrics. Difficult to translate into Afrikaans, I know, Scientometrics, not a word that we're all familiar with, but don't be apologetic about scientists studying science. I mean, people study people after all, so I guess scientists are entitled to study science. In the absence of data and analysis, how would we have known at the time that we weren't accomplishing as much as we might have hoped for through existing modalities? How would we have known that this new Center of Excellence approach was worth trying? And how would we have had any idea as to how to adapt the approach to South Africa's needs and conditions? And lastly, how would we have been able to assess, or would be able to assess, whether these new centers of excellence were actually performing to expectation? The first cohort of centers of excellence was launched just 2 years following the publication of the R&D strategy. And now we should be asking ourselves, just how well have they performed, and what impact have they had on the quantity and quality of research done in our country? An independent review conducted late in 2013 concluded that, and I quote from this review, the centers of excellence have done an exceptional job at building national networks of scholars, allowing the construction of strong centers of science. This was one of the objectives of creating the program, and this has been successful. The centers have also been very successful in developing international linkages. Over its decade of existence, the value and strength of the Center of Excellence program has been abundantly evident, to the point that this year we are increasing our portfolio of centers of excellence from 9 to 14. The irony is that while Scientometrics played an important role in encouraging government to initiate the Center of Excellence program, it is only now that the program is introducing a Center of Excellence in Scientometrics. A further irony is that this new Center of Excellence will be expected to provide evidence of the value of its own work, and that the other centers of excellence, and that of the other centers of excellence, in informing the further development of our science, technology, and innovation policy. The essence of what we will be expecting from this new Center of Excellence will be to provide objective evidence that will form the basis of a better understanding of policy questions and policy choices. The critical interface of this evidence to our science, technology, and innovation activities will be a most important contribution to meeting the critical policy challenges of the day. Now, not wanting to intimidate you, but you kind of have your work cut out for you, and our expectations are obviously high. We know that in 2012, or the year 2012-2013, the Centers of Excellence collectively produced 568 peer-reviewed journal articles, some of them in the Farmers Weekly, possibly, I don't know. 197 conference publications, and 22 book chapters. That is brilliant, but what do these numbers really tell us? What might the publication performance have looked like in the absence of these centers? How do we account for the publishing rate disparities between different disciplines, especially between, say, the social sciences and the so-called hard sciences? More importantly, do these numbers convey anything meaningful as to the contribution to knowledge or the ability to confront our socioeconomic challenges more effectively? We will look to this center to provide answers to these and other critical questions relating to our science, technology, and innovation system. And, of course, as the name of this Center of Excellence suggests, the center's purpose is not only to measure and analyze scientific research, but to help us translate these findings into practical policy and action. While our research and development system is evolving at an impressive rate, so are our research and development needs. Thus, this Center of Excellence must build on our existing capacities and take our ability to understand and fine-tune our innovation environment and policy to a new level. In a sense, this new Center of Excellence lies right at the heart of the missions of the Department of Science and Technology and the National Research Foundation. This is really a very exciting moment for our national system of innovation. It therefore gives me great pleasure to participate in the launch of this new Center of Excellence in Scientometrics and Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. I'd like to thank the National Research Foundation for researching, designing and managing the Center of Excellence program, and most recently for presiding over the application and adjudication process for the new cohort of Centers of Excellence. Yesterday, I launched the Center of Excellence in was it yesterday? Yeah, you know, it all becomes a blur. The new Center of Excellence in Mathematical, Statistical Sciences based at Wits University. By the way, I see lots of friends in the audience as well, not just very important people. So Renfrew Christie is the a fellow prison inmate of mine. 2 years we spent together at the University of Pretoria. I mean the Pretoria Central Prison. And then at the very table that I'm sitting, who wasn't at Wits a couple of days ago, is my wife's mathematician boyfriend from Wits. He knows what I'm talking about. It was a great launch, and there's a lot of excitement around these launches because we know it puts us at the beginning of a kind of a new era in a particular discipline, because we know from research done, from the monitoring and evaluation that's been done, that these centers of excellence really make a significant difference in the quantity and quality of research that we do in our country. Later this month, the Center of Excellence in Food Security, Renfrew, at UWC and the University of Pretoria will be launched. And we've also announced the Center for Integrated Mineral and Energy Resource Analysis at the University of Johannesburg and the Center for Child Development and Livelihoods at the UKZN and Wits. To Professor Mouton, to your CREST team, and to the collaborating institutions, welcome to this prestigious family of Centers of Excellence. Note that this family is prestigious, but decidedly non-exclusive, given that a key aspect of your mission is to institutionalize collaborative relationships with the various pockets of excellence in STI measurement and policy around the country, thus ensuring that the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. So I look forward to the products of the collaboration of this Center of Excellence with the Institute for Economic Research on Innovation at TUT, the Center for Science, Technology and Innovation Indicators, known as CESTI, at the HSRC, the Center for Higher Education Transformation, and others, locally and internationally. This will be directly in line with the successful role of existing Centers of Excellence as captured in the ASAF review, the review on the impacts of the Centers of Excellence. And this is what they said. An important feature of the Centers of Excellence is that they have facilitated interdisciplinary and interinstitutional research and have overcome both the disciplinary and institutional barriers which hinder interdisciplinary collaborative research. Professor Mouton, thank you for your leadership and willingness to take on such a large and important task. And lastly, I wish to thank the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Bortman, who's unable to be with us today, and to the University of Stellenbosch. This new Centre of Excellence, as you said, is the fourth, presumably the last, that we have entrusted to your care. But this really is more seriously a sign of our confidence in your institution and consolidates your place as a significant player in the national system of innovation. Thanks very much.